Now hand the conference over to Mr. Nishit Solanki of CDR India. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Dr. Lal PathLabs Q4 and FY21 earnings conference call. Today, we are joined by senior members of the management team, including Honorable Brigadier Dr. Arvind Lal, Executive Chairman, Dr. Om Prakash Manchanda, Managing Director, Mr. Bharat, CEO, Mr. Ved Prakash Goel, CFO, and Mr. Rajat Kalra, Company Secretary and Head of Investor Relations. Let me share our disclaimer here. Some of the statements made on today's call could be forward-looking in nature, and the actual results could vary from these forward-looking statements. A more detailed statement in this regard is available in the results presentation, which has been circulated to you earlier and also available on the stock exchange website. I would now request Mr. Dr. Lal to share his perspectives with you. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for joining us today for Dr. Lal PathLabs Q4 FY21 earnings conference call. Healthcare and practicing COVID-appropriate behavior have gained higher significance within our society in response to the persisting pandemic. Citizens are making immunity-boosting habits with vaccination a priority. Simultaneously, awareness around wellness and preventive health checkups is also building. Corporates are likely more than ever to encourage or co-opt employees to go for health check packages to manage and take responsibility of their own health. This dovetails with our aspiration of being the leading branded customer or consumer healthcare provider, offering complete diagnostic testing services with wide accessibility. As you are all aware, at this time last year, we experienced the initial phase of the lockdown, whereas this year we have had to contend with a very strongly resurgent second wave. With cases on the rise at a higher rate than before, the need for quality testing that is both accessible and affordable has seen a commensurate increase. The strategic decision taken by the management at the onset of this pandemic to form a dedicated task force to distinctly address the requirements for COVID and non-COVID segments respectively ensured that we were never found wanting in servicing our patients and clients at any time. In being true to our DNA, in the present scenario, we have redoubled our efforts to maintain high levels of service across the network, as demonstrated last year during the first phase of the epidemic. Established national chains are better equipped on account of their scale, experience, and capability. On accuracy and reporting perspective, the DLPL brand stands heads and shoulders above the rest. Given entrenched investments in technology, we can monitor all our labs for every single transaction on the quality front on a near real-time basis and thereby troubleshoot wherever and whenever the need arises. Such operational salience is unique within an industry that is largely unregulated and fragmented. Work on further extending our testing network, enhancing the capacity and capability at existing labs has continued in the past year, as have efforts to drive efficiencies and productivities across our operations. Patient behavior too has evolved during the period with higher preference for online interaction coupled with sample collection at home. Our technology-enabled infrastructure backbone has allowed us the flexibility to make these adjustments to our model smoothly. Using our extensive network of patient service centers, we have been able to scale up home collection services crucial to the management of the pandemic. With the right vision and execution, we are geared to extend our leadership beyond the core geographies. The scale, experience, brand engagement that is possible for leading chains like DLPL is difficult to replicate readily. We believe that we have the right approach to serve the healthcare requirements of the nation and are confident of guiding a best-in-class operating model through these trying times and refocusing on the long-term agenda in the days beyond. With that, I would like to hand over the call to Om to share his thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lal. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us on today's call. I would like to take this opportunity to share my thoughts on the industry, our initiatives, and the way forward. The past year has been an extremely challenging year for all the stakeholders. the challenge still continues and has further gone up in the current financial year. In these trying times, we have seen our role as that of a big purpose. To the best of our ability, we have tried to continue our operations around the clock wherever required. Service our patients at their doorsteps, taken care of needs of travelers, taken care of our employee welfare, and work with various authorities to comply with various requirements. Our leadership team has remained in constant touch with the phlebotomist, field executives, and lab operations staff to keep their morale high. The current crisis also has tested the ability of our operation model to take sudden spikes in demand and simultaneous shortage in supplies. Our employees have shown a lot of resilience in these times. Given our established presence nationwide, we could play a role in scaling up the RT-PCR testing bandwidth across the country. Our network was able to accommodate the sample flow during the lockdown phase, both across the COVID and non-COVID segments. Moreover, with wider prevalence of RT-PCR testing and our enhanced home collection offering, Dr. Lal PathLabs brand could attract a newer set of patients in the B2C segment. A key feature of our pandemic SOP was to optimally use our established network infrastructure by leveraging technology. Given how we have already embedded technology deeply into our operations, we could accommodate the transition in patient behavior from walk-ins to home collections very smoothly. Booking of collections, receiving reports, etc. have been very crucial during the pandemic to provide our patients with quality diagnostics they desire in an extremely seamless manner. When a small lab organizes a home visit versus Dr. Lal PathLabs doing it, there is a vast difference in the hygiene, quality, processes, and convenience part is way better in our case. We have around 3,700 PSCs which are geo-mapped, and thereby we are able to pull all our service requests centrally and optimize usage across the network. Talking about our overall strategy at a macro level, we continue to grow rest of India business, especially west and east regions, thereby further moving towards geographical broad basing of revenue contributions. Contribution from rest of India, ex-Delhi NCR, has increased and it now stands at 64.8%. Even though the contribution from Delhi NCR is getting now smaller, but we still continue to enjoy healthy margins on the back of better realization and scale. Our plans to widen our footprint are on track, and very soon we will be commissioning new regional reference labs, one each at Mumbai and Bangalore. These labs will be supported by a number of satellite labs in the areas and an effective network of PSCs. Concurrently, our approach of acquiring smaller and bottom of the pyramid Unifier, which is our subsidiary, has started now giving us meaningful business. Our efforts will continue in this direction, and this will further help us seed the clusters that we are trying to build in South and Western markets. With that, I conclude my opening remarks and would now request Bharat to take you through the operating performance of the company. Over to you, Bharat.
Thanks, Om. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Q4 21 earnings call. I hope all of you are keeping safe and well. Q4 21 was an eventful quarter with an encouraging trend month on month of non-COVID business recovery, with walk-in and B2C channel recovery clearly visible, along with continued robust growth in our PUP business. This enabled us to register a Q4 versus Q3 sequential growth in non-COVID business as well. As the intensity of the first wave subsided, the COVID portfolio saw a decline sequentially with respect to Q3 20. All this cumulatively resulted in us recording a revenue of 431 crores with a growth of 42.9%. We served 5.9 lakh patients, a growth of 33.3%. We carried out 4.5 lakh RT-PCR tests in this quarter. It was heartening to see a Delhi NCR region returning back to growth and rest of India continuing its strong growth momentum. Our Swasthfit program also saw an increase in contribution to 19% of non-COVID revenues, up 300 basis points from last year same quarter. Our high-end portfolio, including genomics-focused GeneEvolve division, continues its strong growth momentum led by focus on key therapy areas. Q4 21 also saw us making progress on our previously stated objectives of South and West expansion, with satellite labs opening and also construction being progressed on our new reference labs. Our past few quarters' efforts in South and West across both organic and inorganic are also yielding encouraging response. South and West contribution in our business has moved up 340 basis points versus last year same quarter on total business and 140 basis points on non-COVID. In Q4 21, we also launched a new patient app. Our other technology cutting across digital as well as lab and medical side continues to make good progress. As we look back on FY 2021, it was indeed a challenging year operationally, but it also helped us get better serve patients at large, leveraging our expanding geographic coverage, medical, digital, and people capabilities to enable us to progress towards a vision of being the most trusted healthcare partner enabling healthier lives. Thank you. Ved, over to you.
Thank you, Bharat. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for being on this call today. I'm now sharing some of the important financial highlights. Revenue for Q4 FY21 is at rupees 431 crore as compared to rupees 301.7 crore in last year same quarter, a growth of 42.9%. Revenue for the year FY21 is at rupees 1581.3 crore as compared to rupees 1330.4 crore in last year FY20, a growth of 18.9%. Revenue contribution from COVID RT-PCR, antibody, and allied test in Q4 and full year FY21 is at 11.2% and 18.3% respectively. Out of this, allied test, that is IL-6 and D-dimer, is about 12% of our total COVID portfolio revenue in Q4 and FY21. Revenue realization per patient for Q4 FY21 is higher at rupees 733 as against rupees 684 for last year same period. The higher revenue realization is mainly due to COVID portfolio and higher sample per patient in our non-COVID business. Normalized EBITDA after eliminating the impact of stock-based compensation and CSR expense in Q4 FY21 stood at rupees 129.5 crore as compared to 64.2 crore reported in Q4 FY20, a growth of 101.7%. Full year FY21 normalized EBITDA stood at rupees 462.6 crore as against rupees 365.6 crore last year. PBT for Q4 FY21 is at rupees 110.8 crore as against rupees 45.4 crore in Q4 FY20, a growth of 144%. PBT for the full year FY21 is at rupees 394.4 crore against rupees 310.5 crore in last year. PAT for Q4 FY21 is at rupees 85.1 crore as against rupees 32.6 crore in Q4 FY20, a growth of 161%. PAT for the full year FY21 is at rupees 296.5 crore against rupees 227.6 crore in last year, a growth of 30%. Basic EPS for Q4 FY21 is rupees 10.1 per share versus rupees 3.94 in the same quarter last year. EPS for the year FY21 is rupees 35.33 versus rupees 27.42 last year. investments in FD and mutual funds, including cash and bank balances at the end of March 31st, 2021 is at rupees 985.9 crore. We are pleased to share that the board of directors of the company have approved a final dividend of 80%, that is rupees 8 per equity share. With this final dividend, total dividend for the year FY21 is 200%, that is rupees 20 per equity share. In spite of extraordinary situation and COVID-19 pandemic, we have added 15 labs and close to 600 collection center and 2200 POPs in FY21. This includes close to 70 collection centers and around 900 POPs added through acquisition under the our subsidiary PathLab Unifiers. Further, our efforts towards automation and digital initiatives are performing well, and we are able to optimize our margins and maintain our DSOs, inventories, and whole supply chain under control. That brings me to the conclusion of my opening remarks, and I would now request the moderator to open the forum for Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and one on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and two. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Participants, you may press star and one to ask a question. The first question is from the line of Chandramouli from Goldman Sachs. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, and thanks for taking my question. My first question is on the non-COVID realization. I think the previous quarter, the non-COVID realization per patient was about 745 rupees. And if I estimated right, this quarter it seems to be around the mid sort of 710 to 715 range. So just trying to understand if there's any factors that has changed QOQ, if it's down to maybe different sort of mix in home collection business or the mix of tests has changed. Just trying to understand if there's anything structural there. Thank you.
Ved, do you want to take this question?
Yeah. Hi, Chandra. This is Ved. Our realization per patient has gone up, overall, which is in Q4 733. But, if we take out the COVID-related patients, RT-PCR and allied tests, the realization per patient is 715 rupees per patient. However, this realization is increased due to two factors. One is, of course, COVID, but other than non-COVID business also shown some increase due to test per patient has gone up. So overall, if you see the test per patient is seen flat, but if we remove COVID RT-PCR patient out of this, then our number of tests per patient has gone up. So that is the main reason, and there is some bit of test mix change also in this quarter.
Got it. That's helpful. Second question is...
Chandra, if I may broadly add to, I think if I read the question carefully, I think you're trying to understand, is the non-COVID revenue per patient going either downward or upward, or is there any impact on that, right?
That's right.
So I think there are two factors that are operating on this non-COVID revenue per patient either way. Okay. What happens when there is a lockdown? We have noticed that normally the routine tests, which are like sugar panel and the low realization tests, they actually tend to go down because they are somewhat discretionary in nature. But high-end tests continue to remain. Once their contribution goes back on revenue per patient going up for that quarter. Sometimes now, as we've seen, the illnesses are very, very high, and doctors tend to prescribe more and more tests as Ved suggested, tests per patient. So that time also you see revenue per patient going up. But the moment lockdown gets lifted up and you have more flow of non-COVID patient coming in, we tend to come back to the normal revenue per patient. So my sense is in a stable scenario, non-COVID revenue per patient will remain the same. But we have definitely seen a higher contribution of specialized tests in the last few quarters that actually is having a slightly better impact on revenue per patient.
Got it. And just to follow up to that, so the higher specialized tests within the non-COVID space the past few quarters, do you think this is byproduct of the pandemic, or is this something that you think is more structural, just from where you sit and sort of the trends that you're seeing?
It's actually a byproduct of, you will notice that our volume growth is not that high, and most of the volumes that have dropped are of routine tests. So the moment routine tests go away, you tend to have a higher revenue per patient. So it's a byproduct of multiple things, but if I were to pick up 2 or 3 factors, number one, lower volume growth, which that means the contribution from high-end tests is higher. The second factor is number of tests per patient also have gone up. That results into higher realization per patient. And number 3 also is that, especially we will talk about this as we go along, you will see some of these COVID-allied tests, which are D-dimer, IL-6, they also have a higher realization that tends to impact our overall realization.
Got it. That's very helpful. My second question is on the second COVID wave that we've seen over the past couple of months. I think in the first COVID wave in the June quarter last year, we saw a 35-36% decline in volumes on the non-COVID side. So just in comparison to that period, what has been the experience in the second wave? Any context here would be very helpful.
Sorry,
Sorry. I was on mute. Yeah, sorry. Maybe I'll start again. I think second wave is quite different from the first wave, and most of us are quite aware through media and WhatsApp messages that are going around. But I'll still try and, based on my understanding, the way I see the difference between first and second wave. In second wave, we saw a lot of patients actually going to hospitalization. And we also saw, unfortunately, very tragic, very sad, higher death rate as well. Now, that actually had impact on COVID-allied tests going up. If you recall, in earlier quarters, we started talking about COVID-allied tests. And there are 4 or 5 such tests which are actually inflammatory markers. We saw a sudden spike in these tests in wave 2, which actually was to much lesser extent in the wave 1. That's a big difference I found. I think that if I were to pick one, this is a big one.
Got it. And just last follow-up to this.
Otherwise, overall, the cases are so many, so the volume of testing has been much higher in wave 2 than in wave 1.
Got it. And just final follow-up to this, just trying to understand, I think in the June quarter last year, there was sort of a stigma for patients to go into patient service centers, give their blood samples. Is that something that's recurring now in the second wave, or do you think that stigma is something that's much lower?
No, there is no stigma per se now. I think earlier people were really hesitant to get tested. Now I don't think that's behind us. But people are still hesitant to go to a center and give blood samples. They always prefer for home collection because they think, maybe rightly so, that this is much safer. But we have actually tried to manage our patient flow both ways, because at some point in time we found that the home collection capacity is constrained. Since there was a sudden spike in demand, we really couldn't catch up with the pace to catch up with the demand, because many of our own employees also got impacted by COVID. So we did try, especially in Delhi NCR, to open up dedicated collection centers only for COVID. But there was no such hesitation on part of patients, because once we told them that it's very difficult to do home collections, we did direct them to the nearest dedicated collection center for COVID. And Bharat, if you can add to this, and I think we found a lot of people coming to our centralized collection center as well, right?
Yes, indeed, Om. We saw good traffic in our CDC centers, as we call them. So that was a very large portion of what we collected for COVID RT-PCR samples. Yes. The only large requests for home collection were from people who are really positive or from senior citizens. But otherwise, rest of them would come to CDC without any problem.
Got it. That's very helpful. Thank you very much, and all the best.
Thank you. A request to all the participants, please restrict to 2 questions per participant. If time permits, please come back in the question queue for a follow-up question. The next question is from the line of Neha from JP Morgan. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for taking my question. My first question is on the non-COVID recovery that was happening in the fourth quarter. Given we didn't have a national lockdown during the second wave, is it fair to say that the entire recovery didn't really fizzle off, or did you see a similar impact like we saw last year on the non-COVID business this time around too?
You mean say when the current lockdown, which is not that strict a lockdown as we saw last year, right? That's a national lockdown now. This time we've seen in. So I think it's a good question. I think the impact that we had last year on non-COVID was very severe. But to say that in this lockdown, if there is no impact on non-COVID, that's not true. We have seen a depression in our non-COVID flow as well. But to me, that's not really captured in Q4 because of, I think Maharashtra saw it in maybe March, Delhi saw it end of March or early April. So just short answer to your question is, if there is a lockdown, is there any adverse impact on non-COVID business? Answer is yes. Is it that severe as it was last year? Answer is no.
Okay. So it would be more, depending week on week that number would change. So it's not, I can't assume that impact is similar through the last 2 months.
Yeah, because see, at least the patient movements are still allowed for essential services. You can still go out. Last year it was very, very difficult. Actually, people were just not moving out. So this time people are cautious, but they are still coming out to get tested.
Understood.
But as you rightly said, it's so varying week to week basis. It's very difficult to comment as to how it is going to pan out.
Yeah, fair enough. My second question is on this entire home collection that you did mention in your opening remarks that there was month-on-month recovery on the non-COVID side, both on the walk-in and the B2C. Therefore, if you could just give us a sense of, some sense on how much did the home collection come off, as things went to some state of normal in the March quarter, and so that helps us in terms of post-COVID, what could be normalized home collection run rate.
Right. Bharat, you want to take this question?
Sure, Om. So first of all, on the B2C side, we saw a good recovery coming through Jan to Feb to March on the lab walk-in and the PSC side of the business. Number 2, the home collection business, it depends actually on the COVID waves. There is a steady state of business which we have seen about 2.5x. We don't give out channel-wise split of revenue at this stage, so I'll be constrained by that guidance. But yes, we saw a sharp increase, about 2.5 times of what normally we would do in home collection. And that run rate continues to remain on a steady basis even now. What we have done, like Dr. Om mentioned in his opening speech, is that we have been able to leverage our collection center network to further augment this upsurge which we saw. So we take the leads, provide it to them, and they do the home collections at a nearby point, at the last mile being handled by them. And we monitor the service level centrally.
Okay,
Just to add to what Bharat is trying to say, if you look at this, Neha, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Hello. So there are four main revenue streams. One is home collection. Second is walk-ins. Third is through collection centers, and fourth is our pickup point. Whenever there is a lockdown, the worst affected is walk-in business, because people hesitate to come to a large lab format where there is a bit of a crowd. And loss of that channel tends to shift to two main other channels. One is home collection, so people prefer home collection. But entire thing does not shift to home collection. Home collection maybe in Delhi NCR we can do that, but far-flung area it actually tends to shift to collection center, because collection center is a small format. It's about 150 square foot area. There's not too much of crowd out there. So walk-in is the worst affected. Benefit flows into collection center and it flows into home collection. That's the way normally what happens when there is a lockdown. When the lockdown restrictions actually get lifted up, people are a little less anxious. We have seen walk-ins coming back as well, and that is the impact we saw in Q4. And suddenly this wave 2 happened, and then we are a bit of back to square one.
Understood. And sorry if I may squeeze in one last question. Based on the employee cost in this quarter, is this a normalized run rate that we should be assuming, or is there any one-off in this quarter's number?
Yeah. So Neha, this is usual. We haven't taken any one-off item. I think you may be referring to new wage code. This is not yet factored in. Having said that, last year, as it was not usual year, as increments and all that stuff was not fully factored for the full year. So I mean, this is truly not representative of what we usually have on a personal cost basis.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sriram Rathi from ICICI Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So firstly, just want to understand on the COVID revenue. So at current prices, which have been already, reduced significantly, is it like at the EBITDA margin level, is that business dilutive for the overall company level margins, or we are still able to make company level margins in that business?
So I think I'll take this question. It's a great question, and see what has actually happened. I have tried to analyze over a period of last 12 months. There was a period when we had a sudden fall in our non-COVID business. So at that time we were looking at COVID business in its entirety. You just look at from gross revenue till EBITDA. But as non-COVID revenue started coming back, we actually had a very good operating leverage in the system. Like lots of, because if you study our P&L, we have close to 48-50% of our cost structure is very fixed in nature. So at a gross margin level, we are not worse off even at current prices. If you are able to leverage our current infrastructure with the space, people, logistics, we are able to manage it very well. I think, and plus with the revenue going up, and plus a couple of other factors like we saw in wave 2, you do home collection, you go for one person. We found that number of samples collected per visit per person also was very high this time. So that also helped us. Number of tests per patient also per visit also high. That also helped us. So we actually could use some of this leverage to manage the margins better. So if you take COVID business in isolation, and somebody can say, yes, it is dilutive, but if you take it along with the rest of the business that we have, so we are able to leverage it better. So we are able to manage reasonably well so far.
Okay, got it. That's very helpful, sir.
But the challenge will happen if the non-COVID business does not goes down, then there will be a challenge. But I think we have recovered quite a bit on non-COVID. And if you go back a couple of quarters back, when we used to say that we have not allowed any dilution of effort on non-COVID, because we realized early in the year itself that if you don't put focus on non-COVID, it's going to become challenging. That has really paid us well during the year.
Okay, got it, sir, got it. And so secondly, on the non-COVID business, you mentioned that there is some impact because of the lockdown. So is it fair to assume that, the business will be below normal level currently? Let's say in the last 1 month, 1.5 months.
Actually, it's very difficult to say, and I know you're trying to ask more about the recent weeks. But my general understanding is that in healthcare, it is the demand lost today doesn't mean demand is completely lost. People are delaying it, but unfortunately in healthcare, you can't really avoid sometimes these things. So they tend to come up, people are waiting and watching, and now I know, fortunately, positivity rate is coming down, cases are coming down. As this opens up, we do believe that it will come back. And I'm talking from the experience of the last 4 quarters, because we also panicked a little bit in the first quarter when the non-COVID fell, as if what's going to happen. But I did see a recovery happening, and it was not only completely new demand, it was actually old demand which could not be serviced in the first quarter, came back in Q2. I'm not sure if I see some depression in sales in these weeks, and I will say, no, this is going to be trend going forward. I think there is always some recovery of non-COVID demand coming back later as well. But as I mentioned, that week-wise fluctuations are so high, it's very difficult to actually tell a pattern. But over a longer period, I think non-COVID will come back. I don't think you lose this demand.
Sure, sir. So just a follow-up to that, sir. Like in the last quarter 4, we had, more or less flattish kind of revenue because of the impact from the COVID first wave. And on that base, we have grown around 26% odd this year, in this quarter. And now if I look at FY21, we have a volume decline of around 3 to 4% in the non-COVID business. So assuming that the things become normal sooner, so can we expect the growth can actually be like very high kind like we have seen in quarter 4 for FY22? Just qualitatively, if you can.
For FY, yeah, relatively in terms of tailwinds, yes, clearly there is a base advantage, right? So because Q1 is so low, it will definitely benefit into the growth. I think the recovery started in Q3 onwards. So definitely to that extent, there will be an advantage to the non-COVID business growth this year in FY22. But we also have to see how lockdowns really happen, because in fact, when we were sitting in the month of March, early March, we never anticipated that there's going to be a wave 2 and it's going to impact the whole thing. And as I mentioned, the moment you have a very strict lockdown, non-COVID business does go down. And the moment restrictions get lifted up, it tends to come back. So it's very difficult for me to actually project a trajectory of COVID for next few months. Non-COVID business, in terms of headwinds, will all depend on how COVID trajectory goes. But overall base advantage definitely is there this year for non-COVID.
Got it. So lastly, just one question. In terms of your sample per patient mix, that has been consistently improving over the years. Now, this quarter it was close to 2.7 samples per patient. So, we have seen that in the last 3-4 years, the proportion of bundled tests is more or less in the range of 13 to 16%. But this ratio has continued to improve. So just wanted to understand, what can be optimum level? Is there anything which you have in mind that, we can reach to this kind of level in terms of this ratio?
See, I think there are 2 big variables for this. One variable is what is the sort of a sticker price of a panel. As you rightly picked up, as the contribution of Swasthfit goes up, or there are other panels tend to go up, it has a favorable impact on 2 people. One is doctors tend to prescribe panel, patients also don't mind because they say, okay, fine, if 5 tests, I can get more tests, so I'll actually get to, there is some value of additional information through additional tests as well. So as long as we are able to creatively price these panels around some number, let's say 1,000, 1,500, you tend to see that prescription habits as well as patient desire tend to move from a single or 2 tests or 3 tests to a panel test. And panels always will have a battery of tests like 8 or 10, and some of these first fit panels have even 20 tests also. So that's one big variable that is there for this number to move up. The second is as practice of medicine itself, because it's becoming more evidence-based, more awareness about, health awareness is so much these days that virtually patients tend to ask a lot of questions to doctors saying that, okay, why are you doing this, why are you doing that? And they also want few more tests to be done. So it's as the practice of medicine tends to become evidence-based, this number also will go up. And if I were to benchmark with Western world, where of course somebody else pays for the test because they are all insurance covered, it's not out-of-pocket market, there the number is as high as close to 10 per patient. So I'm not saying it will go to that number, but it gives you an idea as to where it can go. But definitely this number will have a tendency to go up rather than go down.
Sure, sir. That's really helpful, sir. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you. A request to all the participants, please restrict to 2 questions per participant. If time permit, please come back in the question queue for a follow-up question. The next question is from the line of Shaleen Kumar from UBS Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Just want to know what's your current capacity of RT-PCR? And second, when you're looking at COVID allied testing, is it that allied test is coming from a COVID positive patient, or is it certain test you're qualifying as COVID allied test?
So we are actually putting COVID allied tests. Wait, correct me if I'm wrong. There are about 5 or 6 tests which are put in this cluster, and majority of the revenue coming from these 2 tests, which is D-dimer and IL-6, and there is another third test, CRP as well. But CRP test is done in many other conditions. I think D-dimer and IL-6 are the 2 tests which are primarily suddenly have come up in our portfolio due to COVID. So that's where, and we picked it up very early also. In fact, if you recall, we started showing these numbers much early. We knew that there is a tendency of these tests to go up, and hence we wanted to take it out of our non-COVID business. So today also if you see our presentation, you will see a non-COVID, then there is a COVID allied, which consists of 5 or 6 ways. Is it 6 tests or 5 tests?
So for this quarter, we are categorized only 2 tests, IL-6 and D-dimer.
Okay, because which are the major ones? Yeah,
major.
So these are 2 tests, IL-6 and D-dimer. The reason why we have taken on this is easy to relate to COVID, because other tests are still common with other conditions as well. So that's why we have not picked it up into allied. So IL-6 and D-dimer are 2 tests which are very, very important tests in COVID situation. That's why we've identified it separately. Now your second question was that why it's going up, and how is it in COVID positive patients, something like that. What was the question?
Right. The question is it you're only capturing these tests? Are you capturing tests coming from COVID positive patients?
Sorry to interrupt you. We are losing your audio. Kumar, we are not.
Okay, I have understood the question. It's primarily coming on account of doctor prescription, and I think it is most of these tests would be from COVID positive, because when one is diagnosed as positive, then you are actually consulting a doctor, and doctor is advising these tests, and whether it's 4th or 5th day or later. So it's basically through doctor's prescription these tests are coming.
And current capacity of RT-PCR test? How many tests are we?
So RT-PCR capacity to be seen in two ways. Number one, it should be seen as a number of locations we do this test. When we started in April 2020, we had only one lab in one state, which is Delhi, and it was done in our main lab in Rohini. As we finished 31st March, I think the number has gone up to 14 labs, right, Bharat?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, 14 labs, and now we've added some more labs in April and May as well. So that's why this number is fairly dynamic. And today, if I recollect, the number has gone up to about 17 odd labs in our system. So that is one way to look at capacity. And these 17 labs are spread across 13 states. And this number I'm telling you as of today, it's not really as of 31st March.
Right.
That's one way to look at it. Second is D-dimer and IL-6. The good news is that it is much more spread out. I think close to 60 or 70 of our labs are doing these tests. So D-dimer and IL-6 availability is much wider than, let's say, RT-PCR. Now, next way to look at the capacity is number of tests that we can do. And I'll hand over this question to Bharat to talk about, because capacity actually has two elements. One is the people capacity, which is to collect, and another is machine capacity. So maybe Bharat, you can throw a little bit light on that number as to how your test capacity is.
So capacity-wise, there are two angles to this. Like Dr. Om mentioned that there is a machining capacity, which is the number of tests which the RT-PCR machine can do on a per 3-hour shift basis, 3.5 hour shift basis. The second is around the people and the crew required to manage the entire lab operations, right from registration to getting the box open to putting the neutralizing buffer and so on. The other capacity on the demand side is on the collection capacity. Now that really depends on how you manage your mix. Is it driven by home collection? Is it driven by COVID dedicated centers? Are you doing large government contracts and so on? So what we effectively do is to run this like a network of labs. When we began last year, each state had considerations saying you cannot move sample out of my state. Today, the states have realized that they can allow samples to be moved across. It's just that the tag has to be maintained, the reporting accuracy has to be maintained. So leveraging technology, we run our entire operations like a network of labs, a network of sites, and we're able to transship samples in case one location overflows with sample on that particular day. So this demand is also on an everyday basis. It is not what you would call, then we establish a pattern and then we're able to manage capacities. From a machining or a people perspective, I don't think we have a real challenge on increasing capacities even further if we want to. Collection and a bit of reporting tends to be bottlenecks at points of time, but otherwise we are very comfortable on capacity.
So, Bharat, considering all the bottlenecks, how many tests can we do bare minimum on a daily basis?
We have surplus capacity of about 30-40% more than what we currently have done as peak.
But any number, that what's the capacity, daily capacity, what we can do? Test-wise?
The reason why one is not talking about the capacity, I think the challenge that we have in sharing that number is because it depends on what channel you pick up. So if you, let's say, catering more to home collection, the capacity comes down because you are not, and then we have another constraint that you have to report within 24 hours. And if you do home collection, by the time sample hits the lab, it's already taken 6-7 hours. So home collection way of doing business, your capacity goes down. But if you pick up government samples, then you have a huge capacity. But if I were to, since you're insisting on a number, we probably even have gone up to about 25,000 samples also per day at a peak level. But as Bharat said that, I don't think we are still sitting, we can still always stretch the system a little more. But since we have to keep this constraint of 24 hours reporting, we want to comply with that. We want to make sure that our B2C customers are serviced more because we have that franchise than B2B. So keeping that in mind, we have even gone to that number as well. But now, and these spikes actually happen only for 1 week, 10 days. They are not on a sustained basis every day. And if you look at the trend, it started slowly building up in April. It peaks around third week of April. Now it's just going down. It falls flat in overnight as well. So that's why it's so fluctuating on a daily basis. It's not that RT-PCR test every day you will have that number. It just doesn't happen that way. While since we share with you the quarterly number, you tend to feel as if like divided by 90, this is a per day. These things are a very, very wild fluctuations. It just peaks and falls also. The very, very steep peaks which we see in these numbers within the quarter.
Sure. If I can squeeze just one more.
I'll request you to come back in the question queue for a follow-up question. The next question is from the line of Malhar Manik from Manik Investments. Please go ahead.
Good evening, sir. Congratulations on a good set of numbers, and thank you for this opportunity. I have just one question. I believe we are using data analytics based on customer footfalls to optimize the location, size, merchandise, etc. of our collection centers and labs. So I was wondering if you can please elaborate on this, like how does it work, what is our optimization accuracy in terms of an approximate percentage, and for how many years have we been collecting this data, and ultimately how does this investment in technology culminate in quicker turnaround time for customers?
Sorry, Bharat, you want to take this?
Sure. Yeah, I can take it on. Thank you. So first of all, when you set up a retail location, it is a lot of science but a lot of art as well. And there are various considerations which go behind where you locate a lab or a collection center. Collection center is fairly simple. You locate in high streets or in high throughput locations or in medical hubs effectively. We use certain data techniques and platforms which for competitive reasons, I can't share exact names, to identify locations which are high traffic and then map against where we currently have supplies from. As far as lab locations goes, there are multiple other considerations, which is real estate availability, plate size, logistics, accessibility, power conditions, and so on. So the variables between lab and collection centers are very, very different. A collection center is fairly simple. The good news is that because of our, let us say, as we gain more experience in leveraging technology and a bit of science, art, our new collection center success rate is very good. They don't drop off the network very soon. In fact, we have a separate program to baby care some of the new collection centers. So we have a robust plan in terms of how do we identify locations, which is both evidence-based as well as some bit of intuitive and heuristic knowledge.
Okay. So if a franchisee proposes to set up a lab in a location which is determined as not optimal, then we reject that. That's
Indeed. Okay. The clarification, it is not a lab, it is a collection center.
Yeah.
We don't typically franchise out our labs. So collection centers, yes, we reject a lot of applications which come from unviable areas.
Okay. And approximately, is there any percentage like optimization accuracy which is right now?
We don't have a science effectively, which I can give a number at this stage, at least in today's call. But yes, we can go back, check, and then maybe cascade it a bit later.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
The next question is from the line of Prakash Kapadia from Anvit Portfolio Managers. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. Congrats to the team on a good set of numbers. These are tough times, so to deliver these numbers, good sign. So congrats to the team. I had two questions. If I scan the diagnostic players data, Dr. Lal has, relatively lower COVID contribution to overall revenue. So are we better placed in FY22 for predictability of growth, assuming, the second wave has peaked and do we think that preventive packages will be preferred by customers and that could see increased contribution going forward? And secondly, if I look at the reference labs coming up in South and West, so, what are we doing to create awareness, especially in Bangalore and Mumbai? And what's the plan, by Dr. Lal? Because, there is already a need which is fulfilled by organized players. So, if you could share some insights on these two questions that we have.
Yeah, okay. First question, contribution of COVID to our total business. I think it's a demand driven. We are looking to serve the demand as it comes. So we are not trying to promote it unnecessarily, push these tests. So it is a function of disease spread. Some states are affected less, some are affected more. In some states, waves have come more, in some states later. So I think it's clearly a function of that. And also, since we are the largest company in India in terms of base, and I think we've done close to 250 crore, which is the highest RT-PCR turnover in the country. That's my sense. I haven't got yet all the numbers in place. That as a percentage of course, total overall sales figures will definitely be lower because our base is very large. But having said that, it's to my mind a function of whichever market you are strong. Second question related to Bangalore and Bombay, whatever we are doing and how we plan to grow these markets. I think this is this COVID thing. What it has done is that people are now preferring more home collections, and home collection business is not a very easy business to scale. I think in that difficulty lies an opportunity for us, because if we can execute this home collection service better than our competition, then I think we are home. And to me, home collection business actually has two broad components to service. One is how tech savvy you are. And I know that our DNA is not from technology, but I think we are moving rapidly on this path. And also our phlebotomy services people, how courteous they are, how they deal with the patients, the entire customer service. To me, all this put together will act as a big differentiator. So to my mind, that is one big sort of opportunity we are seeing in both these markets, both Bangalore and Bombay, because they are very discerning customers as well. And market size is fairly large. And we are seeing some traction in recent past, which is primarily driven by COVID testing also. And we are very hopeful that we should be able to crack these places.
And the part of the first question, do we think, we'll see increased contribution of, bundled packages? Would customers prefer that given whatever, first wave, second wave has happened, because there is definitely value proposition is better. And I think you mentioned, customers don't mind of additional tests. Are we seeing that, or do we sense that could increase further?
Yeah, I think I missed that question. Yeah, sorry. So, as Bharat mentioned in his opening comments, that our contribution of Swasthfit is steadily rising. It clearly shows there's a pattern which is going to fall in place. And I think what, 19%, Bharat is it?
Yes, sir.
So 19-20% contribution on a base like us, which is close to 300 crore business, is a fairly large sort of a number which is now coming from these packages. I think if I were to do a scenario analysis, all of us are, including me and you, are now much more health aware. We want to take care of our health very well. So overall diagnostics is the first place to start, because most of us have realized that the health is something inside you, not outside. So people would want to get themselves tested. So my belief is that this is definitely a tailwind for health packages to grow, both directly self-prescribed as well as also even medical fraternity also would want many of these tests to be done when they are seeing a patient. So I think short answer is definitely it's a positive, it's a favorable factor in times to come.
Sure. That is helpful. And lastly, on the eastern market, how is the trajectory? Because it's been, I think, 3.5. We started our reference lab. Is growth better there? Has it met our expectations? And next year, should we touch 300 crores kind of a revenue in the eastern market?
Are you connected? Hello.
Bharat, you want to take it?
So I think we are very pleased with what we have achieved in East. It took us some time to ramp up operations in East of India, but I think revenue numbers are really robust and growth is really healthy. And in this COVID situation, KRL has established and carved out a name for itself in the markets it operates in. So we are very pleased with what has happened in East, and that is something which the learnings of it is what we are also trying to leverage in as we move forward in South and West as well.
Fine. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next question is from the line of Rahul Agarwal from InCred Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, and heartening to see non-COVID volumes bouncing back as well as higher dividends. Two questions. One is on the PSC and PUP side. I noticed PSC per lab ratio is heading up as planned. Last year it was 14, now it's 16, where you've ended March 21. I wanted to know the lab expansion plan as well as the PSC PUP expansion plan for fiscal 22. So obviously Mumbai, Bangalore are expected very soon. But if you could throw some more light on the balance next 10 months, what kind of labs we're opening, is there any thought there? And what kind of PSC and PUP network goes up in fiscal 22? That's my first question. Thank you.
Bharat, you will take this?
Sure. Thank you. So as far as yes, you're right, in saying that our CC and pickup contribution per lab has moved up. And this has been a conscious way we have been operating for quite some time now, is to bring in leverage into our lab operations as well as servicing the market. As we look forward, and this we have demonstrated even during the lockdown period of last year, our lab expansion program continued without any challenge, and so also a collection center expansion plan. We are leveraging technology on the collection center network, so there is a lot of stuff which has happened on technology enablement, and that is something that has helped us to have a far more accelerated collection center network opening program. Plan, I think our pipeline is robust. And like Om mentioned, apart from the reference lab, we'll also be putting up a network of satellite labs. In fact, some of them have got operationalized in South and West, and we continue to build upon this. So I don't think you will see us dithering on lab expansion plan, including satellite labs, and also collection center and pickup point network will continue. And the one thing which I want to state is while South and West also is a key focus area, there are still markets in North and East and the rest of North where we can still expand to. We can go deeper into the population, or we can, as cities expand, we can continue to expand within the city itself. So those efforts of identifying micro clusters and establishing presence continues unabated.
Got it. So could I say 15 labs a year, 500 PSCs a year is fair? Like just in terms of additions going forward, like 20% on PSCs, 5% on lab network, YOY? Fair number?
PSC network, I wouldn't like to commit a number to at this stage, 500 or 450 or whatever it is. Last year we achieved a good number.
Yeah.
But yes, our effort will continue to remain at a very robust level, because the other point of opening collection centers is we also need to baby care them. There is no point opening collection centers and then shutting them after a year or so. So there is a lot of growth opportunity in establishing them. It takes a year and a half to get them to shape. There are investors who have put in money to open these collection centers. We owe it to them also to give it a full shot to succeed. So it is important to find out where are the gaps, what are the full servicing suite which we need to put in. It is just not opening collection centers. There is a lot of marketing effort which go into it. There's logistics. There is Doctor Connect. There's a whole suite of market activation which needs to be put in place. So the effort will be to stabilize all of this and then build the next level. But the efforts continue unabated is what I would like to assure you of.
Perfect. Got it. Second question, was more to do with first quarter, April, May 2021, which we're going through right now. Earlier, my thought was, we were picky in terms of where we want to do the RT-PCR and COVID business based on state pricing because they were deviating in higher in some states, lower in some states. But right now, my sense is it's pretty much regulated across. And as Dr. Om said, that even at current prices, given non-COVID support, we are profitable on testing at current prices. So would that mean first quarter run rates actually are very, very large if I compare it quarter on quarter sequentially in terms of RT-PCR testing? Like, for example, if we did 450,000 tests this quarter, would it mean like we'll be doing 8-9 lakhs a quarter because the situation is actually worse off this time around versus the first wave?
No. I don't think you would want to take any guess on this number because this is so volatile, so dynamic. The situation changes every day. I don't think I would go in that area of putting a figure for the quarter. And we will service the demand as it comes. But of course, we know that second wave has been very, very strong and peak has been very high. But accordingly, it is coming down as well in the last few days. That is what we've seen. So I think we still have 1.5 months to go. I definitely won't want to put a figure for the quarter right now.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you, Rahul. I'll request you to come back in the question queue. A request to all the participants, please restrict to one question per participant. If time permits, please come back in the question queue for a follow-up question. The next question is from the line of Sameer from Morgan Stanley. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. If I remember correctly, our earlier focus in the expansion of the distribution was more towards PSCs, but I'm a bit surprised to see that pickup points have also, gone up significantly. I would say actually much faster than PSC, about 30%. So just your thought on that. What's really driving this?
Yeah, I think what has happened is that we have done few acquisitions through PathLabs Unifiers. So they have very large pickup point business, and even a small pickup point also gets added. So that has contributed to this. And second area also has been that unfortunately last 1 year has been extremely stressful for many healthcare institutions. Due to lockdowns, they have not been able to manage their loads. So they actually always found some bit of outsourcing to be done through our labs. We were also able to service them better. So that also has contributed to this large growth. Because if some pickup points want to ask to give us a sample, obviously we end up entertaining them. And pickup points, a number per se is not a very sticky number. So it tends to fluctuate much more. From a strategic perspective, I think somebody asked this question in terms of labs and PSCs. We definitely want to improve the ratio between lab to PSC. And when I say PSC, this means our own as well as franchisee. And this is one unit of growth that we really want to nurture because we believe that as the business moves towards very personalized service, home collection, the entire center of action is going to be patient service center. And these patient service centers are going to be franchised out. And we want to embrace this entire network through technology with us on a real-time basis. I think fundamentally that's the direction we want to go. These pickup points, I would say they are getting added because of the market forces and the demand coming in. Bharat, if you want to add something to it, please do that.
No, I think you summed it well.
Yeah, thanks. Just one more, if I may, and that is there any role that your company is thinking of playing in the vaccination drive, and your updated thoughts on the volumes that you are getting or you may get from e-pharmacies?
It's a good question, Sameer. Though I know that in the beginning, a lot of healthcare institutions or allied institutions like chemist shops or even pathology labs, it is usually seen that if we really want to widen the network of vaccination, some of us can also participate in this direction. I really don't know. We are actually definitely, if asked to do so, we will rise to that occasion. But there is a bit of a question mark at our end because there is a requirement of certain spaces to be done. You need to have a waiting area, then you have to have a vaccination area, then you need to have an observation area, and the person has to wait for half an hour there. And there is also a requirement for any adverse event that happens post-vaccination. So the way I see it is that it actually, if you have to really scale up in a big way, then it is like building a new infra. And our phlebotomists, I'm not very sure whether they are from a regulatory perspective authorized to vaccinate. They only they do collection. I think it will be more driven by if the authorities actually come back to us saying that we want to now widen the vaccination network. It will be more driven by the guidelines that we get from authorities. But if asked to do so, we will not hold back. But from a operation perspective, I'm not very sure whether we are just there to do it naturally, because we don't have too much of space. Collection centers are too small, 100, 150 square foot area. So I'm not very sure how we can manage all these 3-4 rooms that required. Adverse event, we don't know. And even if you do a tie-up with some hospital, you need to have some kind of scale to even have some kind of ambulance there. So I think operationally it looks to me a bit challenging as of now, as I see it. But if authorities want us to get involved, so we will definitely come forward and help the country and society if required.
Got it. For e-pharmacies, any thoughts?
Sorry to interrupt you. I'll request.
Sorry, what was the question on e-pharmacy?
Are you seeing enough volumes? Are they scaling up on the diagnostic side, and can they be a funnel into your labs?
So e-pharmacy like 1mg and pharmacy kind of guys getting leads, that's what you think?
Yeah, they've all started diagnostic services as well. So they need.
Yeah, I know. I've seen this. Many of these guys on their own, they have started diagnostics. Bharat, you want to take this question?
Let me attempt this one. So we have tie-up with all the large e-pharmacy chains like 1mg and so on. So they sell our test packages and they give us the leads for us to service, or they give us the samples for us to give the reports back to them. So that is actually in place. Some of them are putting up their own labs. I think there are a couple of them who set up labs in Delhi, for example, Healthians and 1mg. Healthians is not a strict e-commerce player, but yes, 1mg is. So they are putting up their own labs. But that is something which we keenly watch. But we are also building our own e-commerce channel for us to be able to offer services digitally.
Some of these guys actually got advantage during COVID spikes because there's always a spillover of demand from larger setup, because the demand during this period went up so sharply and it has come down as well. It's not that it's just staying there. It happened just for 2 weeks. The demand was so high. Most of us actually couldn't cater to it, whether it is Z9 or IL-6, and I was just doing a math. Actually, it just went up 15 times normal rate. So there is no lab or nobody actually can meet this demand. That's what happened on hospital side as well. But now it has come down as well. So there is excess capacity in it. I think some of these labs got benefit of the spillover demand. And since most of this demand was home collection and customers were using tech solutions, so they did benefit out of this. So having said that, I think some of these guys are not to be taken lightly. So they are definitely competitors emerging in this space.
Thank you very much. Samir, I'll request you to come back in the question queue for a follow-up question. The next question is from the line of Sujit Pal from Prabhudas Lilladher. Please go ahead.
Hi. given the kind of situation has been evolved, sectoral strategic shift could also happen. For guys like Dr. Lal, whose presence was not that great in, say, South and West, do you think that, the current pandemic for last 1 year, which could be going for next 1 year too, the presence of digital also help you to expand faster over here? If that be the norm going forward?
Yeah, if I were to sum up, I think there are more tailwinds for us to enter new markets than before COVID.
Brick and mortar model.
There's no doubt about that. And the tailwinds are coming more because tech solutions, tailwinds are coming because people wanting to actually get a test done from reputed labs. They've heard about it, and we always had good brand equity amongst medical fraternity. We were not that big B2C player, but definitely we were a preferred player amongst medical fraternity. So, short answer is definitely it is an advantage post-COVID for a player like us to go into new markets like South and West. Now it is for us how quickly we leverage that.
That's right. Another question is that, just if you can reiterate the contribution of RT-PCR and allied test in Q4 and FY21. I just missed it again.
So, I know there was some person trying to ask for FY22 Q1 as well, and I'm little hesitant to comment on that because we still don't know what that contribution could be going forward. But historically, yes, Ved, if I'm correct, Q4 is 11.2%.
In RT-PCR.
And RT-PCR, I'm talking about total business, total COVID, because COVID allied is very small last year. So, and for the total year, it's about 18%. Where are you there? I think Wade has dropped off. So, I think it's in that range, about 11% for the quarter and 18% for the year.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you. I request Sujit to come back in the question queue for a follow-up question. The next question is from the line of Kunal Randeria from Edelweiss Financial Service. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. My first question is I just want to understand a bit more on the stickiness of these COVID allied tests, especially like D-dimer. So because there are some, this vaccination, one vaccine is associated with blood clots and all. So do you see a longer tail to D-dimer until the vaccination is done or something?
It's a little technical question. I don't know if Dr. Lal can answer this if he's on the call. Otherwise, I'll take a crack on this. Dr. Lal is there? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello? Yeah. Hello, Dr. Lal?
Yeah, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Can you answer this question slightly? I think the question which I thought was related to vaccination and D-dimer correlation.
Tell me.
So can you repeat the question?
Okay.
Please repeat the question.
Okay. So my question is, I'm just trying to understand the stickiness of allied tests, COVID allied tests like D-dimer. So with, one vaccine being associated with blood clots and all, so I'm just wondering whether you will see a very long tail with D-dimer tests.
See, first of all, this is a myth that, one vaccine gives rise to blood clots, etc. It is well within, something like 6 cases in a million have been spotted or something like that. That can happen with anybody. And what you have to remember is it is not vaccine related, but it is related to COVID. COVID itself goes and affects the blood vessels of the lungs, and that is what causes these kind of problems. There is no vaccination related coagulopathy, as we call it, in India has been reported. but yes, they are on record, but they are insignificant. So the problem what you are asking is due to the COVID effect and not to the vaccine effect on a large scale.
Sure. Okay. So if I were to understand, as COVID, tapers down in India, some of these tests will also go down, follow the same trajectory.
Yeah, that's very clear. Yeah. To me, I think it's a fairly clear thing. It is these RT-PCR, IL-6, D-dimer, they are all linked to the trajectory of COVID. If the COVID goes down, these tests will go down. And that's why I'm a little hesitant to actually put a fully a number, because I still don't know what's going to happen in future.
Absolutely correct. It's like a sine curve. When the epidemic is on and the peak is on, now the second peak is now discernibly coming down. So you will have a less testing of all these tests. And these are all follow-up tests in any case. These are post-inflammatory reaction to the virus. So they automatically come down. And the number of deaths in India, unfortunately, have not come down, but you will see them coming down, and you will see the effect everywhere.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Prabodh from Patekar Investment Private Limited. Please go ahead.
Good evening, sir. Thanks for taking my call. Over the last year, we've seen hospital walk-ins among patients have dropped. So in terms of the hospital tests coming down in favor of home collection, is there any texture you could lend to what you're seeing from a data perspective? And as an extension of this, do we expect that once hospital walk-ins go back to normal level, there will be a reversal of some kind from standalone labs to maybe hospital-based labs?
I think there are 2-3 things that you mentioned. Hospital walk-ins have come down. That's correct. A lot of OPDs have gone online, which is also correct. So walk-ins coming down does not mean that consults are not happening. Consults are not happening online. If I have talked to a few colleagues of mine who run hospitals, they did mention to me, in fact, most of us used to think that this is permanent shift and people will not come back. But when the COVID went down, a lot of people actually started coming back as well. Because there is a patient interface with the doctor, face-to-face, also has its own therapeutic aspect, right? So there is a tendency for patients to come back. So right now, since we are in the middle of this crisis in wave 2, a lot of it is actually gone back online. I think your second question was, will hospital labs play a big role? I think some hospital labs have already started home collection, but their reach is only within 1 to 2 kilometer area. So it's not something they try to build a retail pathology network. They only service their own current patient base. So to that extent, they are doing some kind of home collections, hospital labs.
Yeah, and if I may add, Om, to what you have said, when the COVID epidemic or pandemic is fully on, the people who suffer, who are actually old patients of, what you call these non-communicable diseases, what you call comorbidities, people like diabetics with problems, hypertension with problems, cardiac patient problems, cancer patient problems, renal transplant patients with problems, and other kind of problems, strokes, etc. Those people, they stop coming, or nobody even actually, entertains them that much because you're full of COVID patients. So it works both ways. The moment COVID decreases, these patients start coming back because they are on treatment. Imagine there's a patient of, cancer who's on chemotherapy. That poor chap's chemotherapy has been stopped. So he has to go back. So it is inversely proportional. That's all.
Understand. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
The next question is from the line of Himanshu, an individual investor. Please go ahead. Himanshu Bhanushali, may I request you to unmute your line from your side and go ahead with your question?
Yeah. Hi, sir. Good evening. Congratulations on great sets of numbers. I'm supremely satisfied on how my parents were serviced by Dr. Lal during this pandemic. However, I would want to say one thing. You should focus catering tests through collection centers rather than labs, since at the end we are serviced by more than phlebotomist and supports all the time, even at night.
Sorry, Himanshu, you said we should service our patients through collection centers?
Yeah, because I will share the one incident. At one point of time, I called company center for my mom RT-PCR test, but I got waiting period for more than 3-4 hours. But once I came to know that there's a collection center around my home, so I called the collection center, and the collection center was assisted me very well, and they supported me even at night. So I just want to focus like why Dr. Lal is not catering tests to collection centers rather than lab.
No, I think thank you for
Bharat has already said that actually.
No, thank you for the input. Actually, that's our stated sort of way forward, because the purpose of franchisee is to scale, because otherwise if we start doing it on our own, we can't scale this business. That's the reason why we have a franchisee. And then we want to actually embrace the entire franchisee network through technology, so that we are also able to see the entire customer experience at franchisee level. While you have had a great experience at franchisee, sometimes we also have cases other way around as well. But we want to keep the visibility of the entire experience customer is going through our franchisee. But you are absolutely right. To scale this business, we have to go through franchisee. That's where we'll be able to go every nook and corner of this country.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, due to time constraint, that will be the last question for today. I will now hand the conference over to the management for closing comments.
Ved, do you want to give thanks?
Thank you everyone for being with us on this call today, and look forward to connect you again on our next call. Till then, I wish all of you and your family to be safe and healthy. I would now request the call. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Dr. Lal PathLabs, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us. You may now disconnect your lines. Thank you.